Welcome back, YouTube. This is the second episode on Zaire's Business TV. How are y'all? Today, we're going to discuss the recession, the coming recession. Now, they said in 2019 the recession was coming. Now they're saying 2020 the recession is going to come. They're saying, everybody's saying something. Everybody's speculating about something. But the reasoning is, you guys remember the recession in 2008, right? So how markets work, how economy works is it's a cycle that goes around, but it really looks like this. Yeah, just up and down, up and down. If you look at graphs, I'll put a graph on the screen. If you look at graphs of like the market downturn over the past 20, 40, 50 years, it's very consistent. About every 10 to 11 years, it's like the market reaches a point where it's oversold. It's too high. It needs to drop. It needs to go back down. What goes up must come down. Like, if you watch any CNBC, Bloomberg, anything like that, they're going to be talking about how the last 10 years has been a bull market. Bull market meaning it's been going up, 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 up. Everybody for the last 10 years has been making money. In 2008, everything crashed, correct? So this is like the science of it. When everything crashes, what do you think happens? Stock prices go down. If everything is very, very cheap, that means you can buy investments for very, very cheap. So investors kind of like recession because the simple fact, if you know when it's coming, you can take your money out the market, wait for it to drop. You take your profit out, boom, you made all this money because you invested here, it's now here. It's going to come down. So you're going to take your money out here. So when it gets back down here, you know what you do? You pump money back into the stock. Why? Because for the next 10 years, it's going to go back up. That's how it works. It's a cycle. Just up and down. So they're saying a plethora of things can affect our next downturn. They're saying the Social Security market may crash because all of our grandmothers, grandparents, and aunties, great aunts, they're about to retire. My grandmother retired. My grandfather is getting ready to retire. But they're saying he might not be able to retire. You know why? My generation, our generation, millennials, aren't pumping enough money into Social Security for all of these people, the baby boomers. That's the other thing. When you pay attention to econ, you have to pay attention to a lot of factors. So when you look at the size of the baby boomers, when they die, when they start dying off, getting out of the market, they're not purchasing things anymore, the baby boomers, you have to realize, have been a driving force in our economy for years. The baby boomers, that big generation, they did things like bought their first tables and took out loans, bought cars, took out house loans. They did this stuff. Taking out loans and purchasing things as consumers drive the economy. Millennials aren't putting that much money into the economy currently, and baby boomers are about to stop putting that much money into the economy because notice about old people, elderly, they don't purchase things like that anymore. You don't see most elderly people going to buy a new house. They may buy a new car, take out a new something like that, but they buy, if we're being frank, they're near death, and so they're not going to be buying things that they expect to use for another 20 years. So they're buying things that's going to satisfy them now. If I recognize the habits of my grandmother, she doesn't really care. She truly does not care about money, for the plain and simple fact that she can't take it with her. So when you analyze facts like that compared to the economy, you have to realize in a couple of years, 2 years, maybe 3 years, when all these people start retiring, the money is going to be stripped from the market, and then they're going to start drawing on Social Security. But my generation, our generation, isn't pumping enough money into both of these things for that actually to be sustainable. I saw a graph at some point, and it talked about, it was showing the decline of older people, baby boomers, out of the workforce. And the graph went like this. It went down, it didn't hit zero, and then it's starting to go back up. And this is something else I've talked about with my grandmother. She says she hates to go to Starbucks, McDonald's, Walmart, and see old people working. Why? She says leave those jobs for the younger people who need them. But I said, well, in a couple of years, you may not be able to pull on Social Security. Now, if some people, you have to realize, require Social Security to live. They work their whole lives, and now for one, retirement is fake. All these companies, my grandmother told me, she had a retirement fund. And I said, this has to be legal. This company, she worked at a factory. The company got bought out, shut down, something like that. She said all their retirement was gone. She said she doesn't know where it's at, what happened to it, anything like that. So when you think about that, these people are looking to retire, and now their money's not there. The system has failed them. These people are looking to pull on Social Security. The money will not be there unless, I mean, the government probably will just, what is it called, pump $500 billion into the system. Like, they'll create more money. That is the next issue. The fact that the government keeps creating more money. If you look at the 2008 recession, what did the government do? They created a whole bunch of money so people could go and purchase your things again. What people don't know about the 2008 recession, I studied it for a bit. It was terrible, for one. AGI is a company, an insurance company, which insures investments. This one company had to be bailed out like almost over $500 billion, because when all these house loans, ETFs and exchange traded fund, all these type of things, when they started defaulting, you know, like you hear everybody say people defaulted on their loans, people defaulted on their loans. Okay, but when all these people default on their loans, these loans are being traded as stocks and in exchange traded funds. So if you default, now this exchange traded fund fails. Now all the investors that let's go Goldman. No. Who failed? Lehman Brothers. They closed down. So all these investors that Lehman Brothers sold these exchange traded funds to, now are looking like, where's my money? How did this happen? But investments have a thing called ratings. Now that's where AGI comes into play. AGI rates these companies, and I can't even explain like all of the like significant things that happened, but basically these ratings were wrong. These ratings were terrible. They were subprime. They were subprime loans, but they were rated as if they were good. Like they were giving AAA ratings on C plus stocks. So what that says is you're basically like very undervalued companies that look like very good investments. The ratings basically say, is it a good investment or not? Not even if it's a good investment. They say is it safe or not. So they're like, okay, these are AAA ratings. If you get AAA, that has to be amazing, correct? No. So AGI, when all these people started bailing out, these funds started failing, everything starts failing. These companies, now these banks, insured their stocks, insured their investors through AGI, which is the American Insurance Group. So now, when you look at their books, they're sitting here and they're like, wow, we have to pay out all of these premiums, all these claims. We don't have the money for this. This is the part most people don't know. If the government did not bail out AGI, Goldman would have failed, Bank of America would have failed, Morgan Stanley would have failed, Lehman would have failed, Merrill Lynch would have failed, JP Morgan would have failed. All of these banks had their stuff insured through AGI, and then they're all linked. Like this bank is loaned from this bank, that bank's loaned from this bank. So if you're failing, I'm failing. If you're failing, we're failing. Everybody's gonna fail. The practice of pumping money into the system to save these big companies is the issue. This is why people like Bernie Sanders are now talking about, if you can do it for the banks, why don't you do it for the student loans? Student loans are another thing that people say may cause the next recession, because of the fact that everybody may start defaulting on their student loans. Nobody can pay these high student loans. So what will people do? Default. And if the companies like Bank of America has student loans, Discover has student loans, the government has student loans, the government's going to have to start forgiving some of these student loans, which may happen. The government, whatever the government decides will be the factor that causes the next recession, they're going to pump money into whatever system to make it okay. I read an article, I think 2 days ago, and he was talking about, lastly, this is about the last thing that I learned through reading that article. Actually, he was talking about the overnight banks do this thing. It's like some practice. I really can't explain it fully because I don't understand it fully. The government decides, first of all, money is not worth anything. The government decides how much money is worth because it's not on the gold standard anymore. So that's the first thing. So when you recognize that, you see the government can change the interest rate whenever they want to. So basically the government this night, sometime like I think in September last year, and that's why they're saying the recession is coming, because the last recession started 5 months and 6 months and 7 months before it actually hit that September. So last September or November, there was a night where literally the government had to step in and pump like $500 billion into. They had to save some banks because nobody was lending. And that's a telltale sign. If nobody's trying to lend money, it's an issue. You're thinking, why? Most investors right now are pulling their money out of stocks because they understand how market overturns work. They understand when the market's overbought, it has to come down. They get things like this. So investors like Mark Cuban, I've heard specifically, he says he's only holding, I think, Netflix right now, which wouldn't even be a good hold in my position because they're about to come down. But he's saying everything else he has is cash. He's waiting for the downturn and he'll repurchase. Warren Buffett has almost like $68 billion cash right now somewhere. I watched this in an interview he was talking about. Most of these investors currently are keeping cash. They want cash on hand because they don't want to lend, they don't want to buy, they don't want to invest. So, that being said, all of you guys, if you have money in stocks, because you might have watched this dividend video. Matter of fact, go watch the how to invest $500 into Robinhood. Go watch that video right now. If you're not subscribed, go subscribe. If you like this video, like this video. Otherwise, keep coming back. I'm going to keep hitting y'all with some content. And we are out.